Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Neil, and I just want to welcome everyone to today's meditation practice. Is there anyone here for the first time? Oh, fantastic. Great. Welcome. We just have a few announcements before we get started, and some kind of housekeeping. If you haven't already silenced your cell phones, please do so at this time, and put your phones away so you can be fully present for the talk and meditation. If you must use your phone, please do so out in the meditation hall. So this week, on Tuesday evenings, our Medicine Buddha practice and public talk are canceled. It's usually on Tuesdays from 6 and 7 p.m. But there's an event at Emory University on May 5th at 5:30, where Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, our executive director of the Emory Compassion Center and our center's spiritual director and founder, will be in a conversation with Dr. Gary Hawk, Emory historian and former vice president and secretary of Emory University, about his forthcoming book, Engaged Compassion: 7 Practices to Cultivate Resilience, Connection, and a Joyous Life. If you haven't registered for this event earlier, we just learned that the registration is full. So next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, Geshe Pende will continue speaking on the 37 practices of a bodhisattva. On Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks conduct evening prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life and other teachers. And then our weekly Thursday Protector Puja at 4:30 is canceled this week due to another event being scheduled here. Our popular 5-class foundation series concludes on May 16th with Refuge, Entering the Path of Inner Transformation. This one-day retreat via Zoom focuses on the significance of refuge, which is the entrance to the Buddhist practice. This series is a prereq for the intermediate series and other retreats. We are very excited to announce that Simon & Schuster will be releasing Engaged Compassion by Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi on May 12th this month, in a couple weeks. And on Sunday, May 17th, Geshe Lobsang will lead our 11 a.m. meditation practice, as he is doing actually today, too. And we invite you to join us for a reception and book signing at 12 noon. Information on how you can pre-order the book through the various major booksellers is available in the lobby and on our website. We are pleased to host a return visit with the nuns of Savasti Abbey on May 7th to give an evening talk to our community before heading back home. Join visiting nuns Venerable Thubten Damcho and Thubten Rinchen as they lead an exploration in empathetic joy and equanimity. They will discuss how to move past the subtle biases of us versus them and how to cultivate a joy that isn't dependent on our own personal gains. This is not going to be broadcast, it'll be in person only. Geshe Pendela will lead Drepung Loseling monks' annual Nyungne retreat on May 29th through June 1st. Nyungne is a powerful practice for purification and the accumulation of positive energy based on Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. It is only open to those who have received the 1,000-arm Avalokiteshvara empowerment or any highest Yoga Tantra empowerment. As part of Sakadawa, Geshe Pende will also give a one-day Mahayana precepts that entails maintaining 8 vows beginning from 5 a.m. until sunrise the next morning on Sunday, May 31st. This event is open to all who have taken refuge and will last approximately 1 hour. You do not need to attend the Nyungne retreat to participate. Okay, that's it for activities. And just as a reminder, please do not park on the grass behind the parking lot on the grounds here. If the lot is full, overflow parking can be found via Skyland Drive at the John Lewis Elementary School, outside of school operating hours. So only access the school via Skyland Drive, and then you can walk through to the site. So information on all these events can be found in the lobby and on our website at drepung.org. If anyone is interested in volunteer opportunities to get more involved in supporting our center and programs, please see anyone with a name tag or Michael Duffel, who's also here today. If you're interested in becoming a member to support our ongoing programs and take advantage of benefits like discounts on online courses and any of the courses, retreats, applications are available in the library, and you can also register online. There is a donation box near the entrance of this room. Your generous support helps us continue to offer programs and services like this to our Atlanta community and to those around the world through our online platforms. Okay, so now please stand as we invite our founder and spiritual director, Geshe Lobsang to come in for today's practice.
Good morning. How is everyone doing? Good? Wonderful. It's nice to be back after about 6 months, almost 6 months. I've been traveling, and during this period, the first Sundays were done with Penny and others. Thank you so much for doing that. As first Sundays are for basics of meditation, how many of you are here for the first time? Okay. Well, welcome to the meditation. We will do some meditation. We will talk a little bit about the basics of meditation. And you may have some questions, comments. Maybe we can take a little bit of that time for that also. So, as I said, that this first Sundays here at Drepung Loseling are meant for basics of meditation. In that sense, let me just say a little bit about what, why, and how of meditation. And we can do meditation together. What is meditation? You can just simply think of this as a training, mind training. The word for meditation in Sanskrit is bhavana, which means to cultivate. Cultivating certain inner skills. Very much like we train to cultivate certain skills, whether it's music, playing music, sports, writing, driving, and so forth and so on. Meditation is about cultivating inner skills that are important for our well-being, important for us to live together as social beings. Our lives are with others, so that help us make right choices in life, the decisions, meaningful. Whether it's small decisions that we have to make when we are living in our own families, or if you are in the position of having certain responsibility over organizations, schools, communities, and like that, or larger responsibilities, then your decisions would involve much bigger decisions. But in all those choices that we make, decisions, some choices can be helpful. Other choices we unfortunately sometimes make from a place of confusion, from a place of certain fears, other times other emotions. But very often we do make the decisions from the right place, and we want to learn to make the decisions, more decisions, more choices that come from the right space of our mind. And so therefore that mind training is key. In life, it is important that we have external factors contributing to our well-being, but also it's very important that we don't neglect inner resources that are perhaps as important. Maybe when external needs are met, those inner skills become even more important. Yes, as biological beings, we have biological needs, but we do have also social needs, emotional needs. And that's why that when met with certain basic needs, food, shelter, and so forth and so on, those basic needs, those emotional needs, social needs, become even more important. And that's why I think that we can see today, even in the societies where basic needs are fulfilled, are not that much a struggle, at least in real sense. Not the perceived needs will never be fulfilled. Perceived needs are unrealistic. That's why it's called the perceived. But the basic needs, as the Mahatma Gandhi has said that, this Mother Earth can fulfill all the basic needs of all now about 8 billion people we can think of. But our perceived needs, in other words, sometimes in the extreme forms, it can take form of greed also, but not necessarily in that extreme sense, perceived sense, where we feel what we need. It's more of a want than the need. These when we don't have a way to find a way to mitigate, to regulate, I would say, then we can see a lot of the issues that we are facing today. So those social needs, emotional needs, very important. And that's why the meditation, I think that we need to think of meditation not as alternative to other material needs. Material needs are as important, but we want to attend to those psychological needs, emotional needs as well. So that's why the meditation comes. Why that we need meditation? Because when those psychological needs, the emotional needs are not met, or not certain emotion, are not regulated, it impacts us. Like a great neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio, incredibly gifted neuroscientist who builds the whole explanation about the consciousness and cultures and the civilizations and like that from this basic premise that we, living organisms with the bodies, the biological beings, from the very dawn of life, that we have had one kind of goal, the one primary goal, that is to live. That's what the life, to live, to survive, to thrive. That's what we do. Whether it's the simplest of organism, bacteria, or us as sophisticated the living being on this earth today. We are all driven by one goal, to live. And to what promises us to have a life to see the next day. To avoid what might undermine such basic kind of instincts, to avoid what may be a threat or perceived threat, or to pursue what may contribute to us see another day. That's what the fundamental, the drives that we have, systems are built. In order to do that, we have these systems, the threat systems, to detect threat and respond to through a mechanism like stress response, fight or flight. We have systems of reward systems to approach what's something that is important for us, but equally important as social beings. We have this affiliative system, because again, one of my all-time heroes in the science field, and Franz de Waal, primatologist, as he says, the first and foremost reason for group living in the group, is for security. Security is what? To be safe. Psychological safety. That is what drove our ancestors to find a way to live together, because together we are stronger. Alone we are not that magnificent with it. So that's why the nature has endowed us with these systems to bond, because living together is not just occupying a space together. There we can end up fighting and eliminating each other. Living together means together. That where there is a certain degree of meaningful connection, a bonding that can happen, like the mother and between the child and parents, and like that. Affiliative systems. You can think of today this most, beautifully understood as love and compassion. Like that. That's where a meaningful connection between the two people, between the group, family, and society could happen. Darwin actually thought, that he, observing the father of evolutionary biology, he observed that sympathy, his choice of word for those times for compassion, sympathy. He saw that it's one of the strongest instincts that the social animals have. Sympathy that connect us, that help us bond and to see each other's needs and to respond. It's the strongest, one of the strongest instinct, social instinct. That society is needed together for us to better survive. What allows us is one of the crucial instincts are sympathy, the capacity to bond, to connect. And he noticed that species where sympathy among the members is in abundance, those species flourish. Where it is missing, those species perish. That is what he observed, and this is what is becoming clear today. More and more findings in the social sciences. Evolutionary biologists are looking at, neuroscientists, contemplative scientists. What the spiritual traditions, such human organizations, that religious traditions all across the globe, have tapped into this kind of insight, this wisdom, and that's what all promoted love and compassion. Sometimes we get kind of more into the thinking that we are self-made, that we don't need others. Particularly when it seems like that, that our what we need, basic needs and so forth, we can maximize by our efforts and like that. When that sense of community begin to erode, you can see a lot of social emotions. There are a lot of emotions, that emotional problems. So our society today, I mean, you tell me, you've been living here in America, I've been away for 6 months. Do you feel this is that kind of, the thread connecting us is strong and going strong? Or at times you feel that it's getting frayed, like that? So that's why the meditation, we do need inner cultivation for our own well-being and the well-being of our children, of the society. And so that's why why we need meditation, why we need to cultivate these inner skills. When speaking of inner skills that we need are manifold. There are many different inner skills we need. Having a stronger bonding connection, it's so key. That's true. We need to promote a greater inner resilience, emotional resilience. We need to have inner skills to regulate our stress and emotions. Have a better regulated state of our body and mind. It kind of expands this, what in the health sciences may call the homeostatic range, a zone of well-being. In C-learning, they developed at Emory University, social, emotional, and ethical learning. For children, we use the language OK zone, where you feel a little better, where you can have a little better cognitive abilities to think more clearly, and where you can perform a little more efficiently, better. For that we need where we can live. So, for us, we need many states in that kind of range where we thrive. Whether it's a blood pressure, there is a certain range. It goes out of that range, body begins to fall apart. It drops below certain range, we also don't function well. Whether it's the glucose levels, cortisols, cholesterols and so forth and so on, all have a range. Within a certain range, side of that, if that gets deviated from for long, that's where the tissues break down. That's where the wear and tear happens on the body. So that's why, how do we keep ourselves in a little bit more in that range where we, day becomes a little easier to live, where we can make little better decisions, perform a little better, and like that. That's what first and foremost for the meditation, I think, is to figure out, that how we can begin with that. So for that, the work here is inner work. So how to meditate, One of the great masters in Tibet, known as Panchen Losang Tenzin, the first Panchen Lama was known. Panchen Lamas are the second most important lamas in Tibet, first being the Dalai Lamas, in successive line of Dalai Lamas are the most important spiritual teacher. Second most important in Tibet referred to as Panchen Lama. The first of that, to Panchen Lama in the 1600s. He wrote many books, very, very important meditation. One of the manuals, one of the texts he wrote on meditation to explain what the meditations are and how to do. In that he says that the beginning, the gateway to meditation, to enter into the realm of that inner training is observing our inner domain. Inner domain. It's the inner work, so if we remain clueless about what we are feeling, what our emotions are, how are we going to regulate them? You cannot regulate something that you are not aware of them, right? Awareness is very important. Attention, bringing attention to inner domain is the beginning, to inner domain, to into our body, to into our feelings. So that's where the meditation begins, to learn to little better attune. I mean, it's throughout the societies, the world, the know thyself, knowing yourself, is taught by all great thinkers, who really kind of looked deeply about how to live the life, a bit more meaningfully, with a bit more joy in life, knowing ourselves. And then, of course, there are many different ways, but one of the first steps is to be attuned to our bodily sensations and related emotional feelings. Of course, when we become dysregulated in our bodies, the stress that can build, the everyday challenges, everyday ups and downs can have impact our nervous system, our bodies. And then everyday, our own kind of psychological, emotional life, they have impact also, alter our bodies, our tissues, our chemical profile, our nervous system inside. So it's important that we begin first by what Daniel Goleman, this incredible psychologist whose work has made such a difference with his writings like Emotional Intelligence and other books. He talks about inner focus. Bringing inner focus is to manage our inner life, regulate our emotions, inner focus. So why we need to bring focus to our inner life, first to our body, the bodily sensations. Bodily sensations are, unfolding from what our nervous system is doing, what our, our heart is beating faster or slower, how our organs are doing inside. You know, it ultimately has to do with the emotions. You know that. So, if we are unconsciously or consciously sensing a certain threat, or certainty is not conducive for us, we end up eliciting those responses that to help us cope with those. When those are constant and inappropriately happening, they alter our inner system. In the range that we are, it can bump us outside of that kind of homeostatic range, well-being zone, where we may feel quite anxious, quite irritated, sort of panicking sometimes, like that. In those states, it's not just happening in the head. Those emotional states alter our physiology. So therefore, if we were to become attuned to what emotions we may be experiencing, one way is to pay attention to the signals that unfold in the body. If our chest has become tighter, do our shoulders feel a little heavier? Our back feels more tense, our face more tight or relaxed, soft. What do we feel in our body? When we are in that high zones, that stuck in high zones, that's where the signals are. When that more stress is noticed, by those physiological changes. Other times we can have dropped out of that zone, or the verging towards that, or more towards that lower one, when we become a little bit hopeless, discouraged about the situation in life, and like that feel down, the body itself got to begin to slump. There is a certain kind of fatigue in the body that we can feel down emotionally. So we need to notice what body is telling us. And through that, to what the feelings that we are noticing beyond those physical sensations. And if we are dysregulated, one of the easiest way is that we do that every day. Often we get regulated by our family members, others co-regulated, socially regulated. Others, if we are feeling like somebody putting their arms around us, can provide comfort, things like that. But we need to learn to self-regulate. Meditation is about developing that inner skills ourselves. So what do? We can bring our attention to, if we notice we are dysregulated, that manifests in the sensations, as I mentioned, that we notice as emotions of worry, agitation, feeling down. Then we can take a few moments to ground ourselves. There are many ways to do that. Sometimes we just take a walk. Sometimes we can just lean against a wall. Sometimes we seek hug from others, warm touch. Help us ground like that. Hold hand to your loved ones. or you have some things on you, you touch, you know, that you may have. But something that we have constantly going also is our own breath. We're breathing. Beautiful thing that gives us, brings oxygen constantly, making possible that we live. Oxygen. We're breathing just constantly, breathing out. You know, that it's this also carbon dioxide or what is not needed. Breathing is such a sacred, such a precious gift that we have. The air from the nature that these trees that give us. We can bring attention to our breath, just taking a few deep breaths, just bringing in that life-giving oxygen to let it nourish you. Breathe out, let it go. Any tensions that you may be feeling, just allow outgoing breath to have clear. Just, you can do that in the meditation formally doing, you can do that in everyday life when we need it. So we need to do that. Of course, you know, it's easier said than done, because as we go about our day, how often do we notice that, yes, my chest is becoming tighter, my shoulders feel really heavy. You know, how often do we notice that we are really feeling anxious and down and like that? When we do not notice, we don't have the choice to do something, bring the attention to the breath, to regulate, and keep it there for a few moments. We don't have that, you know, often. Emotions unfold very quickly. And then when they kept unfolding constantly with just, you know, particularly that as complex a society we live today, the lives that are complex, there is the constantly that we are triggered with certain emotions, not even knowing that and going through that, you know, adding to the dysregulation of our nervous system, our bodies, feelings, and like that. That's where that we don't feel good, think clearly, function well. So we need to, if the meditation is developing inner skills, at the very least it's about developing our ability to little better be attuned to what's happening in our inside. Have a little bit of choice built to when, if we are not in the regulated, feeling high or low, then to have a choice to bring our attention to the breath or somewhere else and be able to sustain it for just 15-20 seconds is what often, I mean, of course that is not just, that's a magic, you know, number of seconds. I mean, of course, some emotional issues are much more grabbing and that keep us just going into rumination. Just that there we may need more work. That's why there are many different forms of meditations. But to bring our nervous system from a kind of dysregulated state and a sympathetic, to, you know, bringing it a little bit more regulated. Actually, it takes about 15-20 seconds. That's all. If we can sustain our attention for those moments with something that helps us calm, that helps us come in that state. That's what. But it's not easy. And those are the three skills that we can build. Bringing attention inside to notice that being more aware. If we are not regulated, we feel, the high, up, down, have a choice to bring our attention to our breath or something else. And thirdly, to sustain there a little longer, to allow our nervous system, our body and mind to become a little bit more regulated, come to that resilient place. And we can do this very simply by bringing attention to the breath and just keeping there for a few breaths, 7 breaths, repeat it again. Just 1 breath at a time, up to 7, repeat it again. Just check it now and then if your attention is with the breath or has gone somewhere. If it has gone somewhere, use that choice here to return, bring to the breath. Once return, see if you can sustain it there a little longer. It's just doing that, we can build those inner skills that can be so handy in everyday life. So, shall we do it? Let me invite you to adjust your posture. As you are adjusting your posture, to sit for about 15 minutes or so. If you notice any immediate tensions like heaviness in the shoulders, tightness in the chest or the neck and so forth, just feel free to stretch, just stretch. Sometimes stretching, like that, you do a stretch and release. Notice that how the body state changes from the tightness to some softening. You can do that same thing with the neck or the back, giving good stretch to your back of the neck and releasing it. If the tightness is in the chest, bending the back, the head a little, stretching backward, giving good stretch to your chest, and release with the out breath. Notice how it softens. So as needed, please stretch to soften some of those tensions in the body. And then if it is not uncomfortable, please assume that position that may be more conducive for us to stay awake, yet to have our mind little relaxed, have that more balanced state of mind to do the inner work. And that is, for that, we bring our back in the upright position, and just bringing in the upright position, just let it settle without needing to hold with pressure, but just let it settle like the stack of coins, standing up of its own accord, our vertebrae. Just sitting in that upright position. Bringing attention to this upright position of your body, see if you notice any subtle shifts internally. Perhaps a little boost of energy that we feel that makes us a little bit more awake and alert, making our breathing a little easier, smoother. Bringing our attention to body that is nicely settled on our cushion or in the chair. Sitting in the chair, perhaps your feet just firmly placed on the floor. bringing attention to the contact of your body with such support, the cushion, the floor. How it's supporting our body to be stable and still. See that it brings a slight inner shift whereby we feel a bit grounded and settled internally. With some alertness, yet with our mind settled to some degree. Let's take a minute to bring our attention to our body and the mind. Bringing our attention, directing it to a couple of places. It may be chest, shoulder, neck, face, upper back, or other places. Attuning to such places in our body, see what that body landscape, inner landscape feels like. Does it feel tight or relaxed or somewhat relaxed? In case of the places like shoulders, does it feel heavy or light? Any other sensations do you notice in those places, such as heat, coolness, other sensations? Do they feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Beyond these physical sensations, just take a moment to see what else is going on our inside right now. What is preoccupying our mind? Are there any lingering feelings of worries? Or just a lingering sense of unease? Or some agitations? Or feeling down? Or just the feeling ease, joy, excitement? What is that inner mental space? What do we notice? What feelings there? In this initial just quick check-in with our body and mind, if we do notice any tensions, tightness, heaviness, certain unpleasant sensations in the body, or the certain feelings of worries, agitations, feeling down and so forth, let's here take 3 deep intentional breaths and with the exhalations to see if that helps us soften some of those tensions. As we breathe in, just taking slow yet full in-breath. With that, bringing in the nourishing air, rich with life-giving oxygen. Just take a moment to pause to let that in-breath infuse with our whole being. And as we breathe out, just long and full exhalation. With that, releasing, letting go of those tensions of the body and mind that we may have been experiencing. Just let the outgoing breath help us release, clear to some degree, thereby allowing our body and mind to settle. Any degree of unfolding sense of ease and calm that unfolds. If that happens, rest your awareness with a sense of ease. Otherwise, take 1 or 2 more of this intentional in-breath of those nourishing air, for that matter, any resources that you feel that you need this moment, the peace, a sense of safety, hope and so forth. And breathing out with that, just letting go of what for now that we don't need. Just any tensions, worries, agitations. With the outgoing breath, just let them go. Connecting to any degree of this unfolding inner ease in our body and mind, let's here take a few moments to build these very necessary capacities for us to maintain our body and mind in that homeostatic and more that well-being regulated zone. For that, as greater ability to be aware of where our body and mind is important, greater choice when they are not dysregulated to bring to somewhere that can help us regulate and be able to keep it there. These are the crucial skills that we can build. For that, we can choose our breath, if that is helpful, to anchor our attention here, to build that capacity to keep our attention where it needs to be. If breathing is not comfortable, you can choose something else. Perhaps the sounds unfolding around. Or even imagine certain moments that where you felt comfortable and keeping our attention there. But if the breathing is not uncomfortable to anchor our attention here in the present, then see where you notice your breath, where you can connect with the breath most easily. Is it with the abdomen, as the belly rises with in-breath and flattens with the outgoing breath? Or at the chest, the lungs fill up and empty with incoming and outgoing breath? Perhaps at the nostrils, as you breathe in this fresh air, a subtle cool sensation that unfolds in the nostrils, and exhaling warm air, the warm sensation that you notice in the nostril. Wherever you can connect with your breath with these changes, just directing our attention there to attend to each incoming and outgoing breath just for a few moments. See if one breath at a time, you can be as aware of that in-breath and the sensation of the outgoing breath. Just for 5, 7 cycles. Silently, we can just count each cycle as one. When completed to that intended number of 5, 7 or 10, 11, you can begin again from 1 to see if we can thereby cultivate our attention's ability to sustain where we want it to be. In this case, with the breath or another object of focus that you selected. While sustaining our attention in the present with the breath or the other object of focus that we selected, if you notice your mind had wandered into the past, reliving certain things, or the anticipations of the future, or just random sounds and so forth and so on, random thoughts, Just acknowledge when you notice, and just gently exercise the choice to bring our attention back to the present, back to the breath or the object of another object of focus. Once reconnected, then see if we can sustain it there for a few more moments, a few more breaths. No matter how often you notice your mind had wandered from the breath or the object you chose to focus, just each time that you notice, see this as such a wonderful opportunity to exercise that choice, to bring back to the present, to the breath, to where you want attention to be, and to further sustain, build the ability to sustain there. Each time we notice such distractions, bringing attention back to the breath, back to the object of focus, and just once again, once reconnected, sustaining it there for a few more moments, a few more breaths. In these few moments where we just chose to bring our attention to the present, to the breath, and just sustaining it there. If something else unfolded in our mind, just acknowledging and just bringing attention back to the breath, back to the object of our focus, and sustaining it there. See here, once again, bringing attention to your body, those places where you checked in earlier, to see if there are any further shifts in terms of the chest, any more soothing, more any further relaxed, that you feel shoulders any lighter, the face any softer. And internally, do you feel any bit more calm, peaceful? A certain sense of joy and safety. Any degree of these shifts, if we notice, knowing that this is an indication that our body and mind are a bit more in that resilient zone. Our nervous system a bit more regulated, our bodies and mind a bit more regulated, where we feel better, we function better, we think better. It's a skill that we can enhance like any other skill with repeated practice. So let's dedicate this practice that we just did, any positive energy, any benefits coming from this, towards our continued growth in these inner skills. And for that matter, let's dedicate these positive forces for greater good, for peace, healing, harmony and happiness for all beings. And let's conclude by setting an intention. Intention to bring these skills in our everyday life, beyond this question. Something called the informal practices. Now and then, as we go about our life, now and then, just taking a moment to briefly check in with our body and mind. To see what we are feeling. Are we feeling regulated? If we find in those moments we're a bit feeling tense, tension, or down, perhaps we can take a few seconds there, maybe a minute, to direct our attention to our breath or something that may be pleasant, that may have for us association with certain sense, certain comfort and safety. And just bring in the attention there for a few seconds, allowing our body and mind, our nervous system to become more regulated. Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. It's 12 o'clock. So, have a wonderful day. Okay. Thank you.